here.
All right, February, as you know, is Black History Month, right? And a recent report actually reveals that 65% of Black professionals say that Black employees have to work harder in order to advance, while only 16% of their white colleagues agree with that statement.
Yeah, and here to give us more information on this topic is Julia Taylor Kennedy. She's the Executive Vice President at the Center for Talent Innovation. And joining her, of course, is a friend of bold, Netta Jenkins, co-founder of Dipper.
Hi, ladies.
Welcome, ladies.
Hi.
So it's not just race that might be an issue in the workplace. It's also gender. I mean, I'm the only male sitting here today. So tell us about that. Why is there such a wide gap between what we perceive, as the head of a corporation, typically a white male, and, everyone else, we'll call it?
Right. I think, the gap is systemic, right? There are deep-rooted issues that are happening within organizations that aren't being focused on. And what's happening is it's being overlooked, right? So many companies want to ensure that they have representation, Black, Latinx, women, Asian, and they want them to be the face of the company. But they're not looking at how long is it taking them to be promoted? How long is it taking those folks to, how are they feeling? In meetings.
Is hard, Netta. Come on.
Right. It is hard.
Rooting for the picture is easy.
Yeah.
Actual change
is absolutely very, very hard. But if we're not looking at these deep-rooted issues and we're just looking at the surface level, then we're not going to create any type of change.
Here, how do you look at the deep-seated issues then? Okay, right. I can tell you, just from what I heard over many, many years, the number one dispute I hear, against what you just said, which I personally agree, is, women just don't want to work long hours. In general. Not speaking for everybody, right? You can't, you can't touch that. I can say it, right? Like, they want to have a family, they want to have kids, so they don't want to spend that much time in the office, and the wage gap or whatever gap reflects that. Actually, no. It's much more than that.
What are your
how do you get people to listen?
Right. Yeah, I think it's a really good question. And at the Center for Talent Innovation, which is the think tank where I work, we've been looking at this question for a really long time. Actually, the question you just posed is the reason we were founded 15 years ago. Our founder did a study called Off-Ramps and On-Ramps that looked at why do so many of us think it's about women wanting to spend more time with their family, that they're earning less money, rising less quickly in their careers. And so we conducted a survey and did all kinds of research that showed it wasn't actually that women didn't want to be working hard. It was that there weren't support systems in place to support them as parents to be able to do that. And that's a conversation that, unfortunately, we had 15 years ago, we're still having today. But when you look at the progress we've made in diversity and inclusion and in that space that big companies have made, we have made more progress for white women than we have for Black women and on issues of race. And so that's one reason why CTI actually conducted the study that we did, that site that you just made, Being Black in Corporate America. One of the things that came out of that study was that white women are seen as having made more gains in diversity and inclusion, and even we as white women are very unlikely to say we're bringing other groups along with us.
Right.
So I think thinking about different identities that people carry, gender and race, and the different overlapping identities is really important, especially during Black History Month.
See, for a lot of our viewers, dating, thinking about a family, maybe getting married, you're already married, right? And right. So that's just something they think about. It may not happen immediately, but that's down the line. But the truth is, women, after you are pregnant and have a kid, you try to go back to the workplace. I'm just speaking what's the reality, right? No matter what kind of policies are in place, no matter how much they say I can't discriminate you, I feel like in your boss's mind, they think, you're just not going to be as dedicated. Because what if, something were
It
to
dings
happen
your
at
career
home?
either way,
Right.
right?
So
Yeah,
you're gonna
does.
take a penalty either way.
Yeah, it's a scary thing, absolutely, because I have an 8-month-old. So I had a child last year, and it was very scary. And I know that my, organization, gives great maternity leave, right? So about 6 months. But I had to think, okay, well, I'm taking 6 months off. How are they going to feel, right? And then going back into the workforce, missing my son. Not being able to have that bond.
That's a very sensitive balance.
It's a very, very sensitive balance. And so you need people, especially at the top, to be support systems for you and to understand those impacts and effects as well.
Yeah, I personally know female executives, they took their maternity leave 2 days before their due date. Because, given their positions, they didn't feel they would be safe if they leave any early. And I remember that President Donald Trump famously said, and I'm quoting, that pregnancy is an inconvenience for businesses, which I'm not saying it's completely wrong. Depends on which way you look at it, but that's the reality we deal with. So I wonder if there even is a solution.
Yeah.
Well, I think that some solutions that employers are putting in place is to also put in place policies for paternity leave, right? Yeah. We are all parents, both men and women. And so we need to have supportive workplaces that allow us to change how we view parenthood and who's primarily responsible for it in our society. So companies and individuals carry some responsibility for that. But I think in a comment you made about what's in managers' heads, right? That bias that's really hard to, it's ephemeral. It's hard to nail that down and pin it down. Something that we also see companies doing is trying to have more open conversations about issues like gender, parenthood, race, so that people can air how they're thinking, how they're feeling, and I know you're doing a lot of work on this too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And open up the conversation so you can address an issue that may be underlying that hasn't been talked about before.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room, because a lot of people with diversity and inclusion think like, oh my God, you're just displacing people who are qualified for having these jobs, right? So we need to address that, right? Because we need buy-in from everyone.
Right.
Because it can't just be diversity and inclusion, pretty for the picture, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly.
What is the value proposition for people who are not in the traditional? I'm a white. Let's say I'm a white male.
Right.
Like, why do I care?
Well, listen, there's a business impact as well, right? When we start looking at products, if products are not inclusive of our culture, our community, you're not going to make money. And there are a lot of products out there like that. And we've seen the impacts of, when Gucci came out with that blackface sweater, right? Who was at the table? Was there?
Evidently no one.
Well, here's the thing. Maybe there was someone. A lot of Black and Latinx professionals, unfortunately, tend to not have that voice, right? So you may have a seat at the table or maybe a seat on the floor, and you don't have a voice. And then you can't impact the product. And what happens? There's a hit to that product, and there's a hit to the financials as well.
You're leaving money on the table.
You're leaving money on the table, and that's one of the reasons why, my co-founder and I launched Dipper. Dipper guides professionals of color to a better workplace, one review at a time. So we want to ensure that Blacks and Latinx have the support system and they have the opportunity to share their work experiences, but we also want to make sure that companies are better, right? So we're providing them the solutions to be better as a whole.
Wow, she's got the pitch down, doesn't she, Julia?
Oh, what can I?
See, your organization, you said, has been around for 15 years.
Yes.
Realistically, and I'm not even projecting high hope or anything, do you think we'll be able to solve this problem in another 15 years?
15 years in a space like this is a short time frame. I am optimistic that we can drive change and that we can get smarter about how we're doing it. What you just laid out was a really clear case. The demographics of our world are shifting. So not only is it that reputational risk is higher as people can jump online and talk about an issue with a sweater, it's also that you're increasingly wanting to reach diverse markets because that's who's your customer base. You're increasingly needing to employ and promote people who are diverse, because that's who your talent
And let's not
is.
forget about the power of the purse of women.
Power of the purse of
absolutely.
Oh my
women.
God, my
Title
mom
of two
writes
of
the
our
checks.
reports.
It's not
That's
my.
right.
Yes, of course. But
That's
everyone
right.
forgets that part. The Super Bowl ads, you want women watching.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So these market forces are strong and are getting stronger. That gives me hope. But I also think that companies, we saw what the Business Roundtable put out last summer around needing to engage more stakeholders than the shareholder, and diversity and inclusion was
Just
openly
not
mentioned
blindly
there.
making money anymore. That's a
Exactly.
major shift. That was a
Exactly.
big deal.
Companies have a role in society that they're at least publicly recognizing. So I am hopeful that with things like the targets that are being set in the UK, other policy shifts that are happening in other countries, we can learn what is impactful. The studies that we're putting out, the work that we're doing,
Right.
we can learn what actually drives change and implement that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Okay, to be continued.
We have a lot to talk
Yeah,
about. We have a lot
exactly.
to talk about.
The work is
Yeah.
never done, folks. And
No,
thank
it's-
you so much for the work that you
Yeah,
do. We
thank you for
appreciate
doing
it.
Thank you.
it. It's very important.